This is my Brian Yuzna DVD collection. Now, Brian Yuzna is mostly known as a producer. He produces a lot of horror films. He mostly does horror and science fiction. He's most known for producing Stuart Gordon films. He produced, Re-Animator, From Beyond, Dolls, and so on and so forth. But he has made a stab into the directing field. And I like to call him the sequel director. He seems to direct more sequels than almost any other director. But like Stuart Gordon, his films are very tongue-in-cheek, very silly, very gory. Um, I'd say his films aren't quite as darkly perverse as Stuart Gordon, um, to differentiate between them. And the first film I own of Brian Yuzna is Society. Now, Society is a really underrated film. It got shelved for a few years before it got released, and it's a very interesting story because it shows that the high rich class society are actually mutant monsters, and this adopted kid, a teenager, finds out about this and just horrified, and the rich people, they like mutate and become one being, and it's really, really bizarre, and I really enjoyed it. And that film really deserves more credit than it gets, and it's out of print on DVD at Anchor Bay release. If you can find it, that's well worth the hunt. And then he's most well known for directing the sequels to Re-Animator, and of course he directed Bride of Re-Animator, the first sequel to Stuart Gordon's Re-Animator. And when I first saw this sequel, I didn't really like it. It ignores a lot of facts in the first Re-Animator. Characters return that were killed or dying or squished with no real explanation, but over time I've grown to like this sequel. I don't like it near as much as Re-Animator, but you know what? For a sequel, I didn't think it's now I don't think it's that bad. I actually rather enjoy it. This is the out-of-print Pioneer edition, by an artisan. Contains both the R-rated and unrated versions, and that's one of the gems in my collection. You can easily get a re-release by Artisan that's only in full frame. This includes both full frames and matted versions. And then he directed, and then I have a film of his, Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 3, The Initiation. He produced and directed that, and he produced Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, The Toymaker. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, The Initiation is a nice, I find it a companion piece to society. It's about this unique group of people that are just, that are bizarre and try to take in and keep people out of their world. And this one has a bookseller, and she finds out people in her apartment building like worship bugs and all this, and they invite her in to join her group. And it's, again, like Society, really bizarre. This film is really underrated, and the reason I find it underrated is a lot of people dislike it because it has nothing to do with the Silent Night, Deadly Night series. It's the fourth film in the series, but it has no Killer Santa Claus. The first three films had continuity with a Killer Santa Claus. This one doesn't, and I really think the title hurts it. They originally titled it to, sucker more people into renting it or buying it, and it hurt it in the long run. And it does have a lot of problems. The narrative of the story, again, there's a lot of things in the plot that make no sense and are not explained, but I find that actually to be an underrated Brian Yuzna film. Then, of course, we have Return of the Living Dead 3. Again, one of his most popular films. I first saw this, I don't know, when I think I was in 8th grade, and I was really disappointed in it because it is so different than the first two Return of the Living Dead films. This was the first one to be direct-to-video, plus for Brian Yuzna, he actually makes it more darker in tone and more serious than the more comical first two entries. And I've actually, again, this is one of his films over time that I've learned to appreciate more. It kind of has a unique Romeo and Juliet tragic love story about it. And it has some really amazing visuals in it. And now I am actually a fan of this film. Again, you really should stop after Part 3 because Return of the Living Dead 4 and 5 are almost unwatchable. But this is another one of his films I've learned to like and appreciate more over time. Then I have The Dentist. I bought this for $2 at a pawn shop, and I was actually very surprised by how much I liked it. Stuart Gordon wrote it with Brian Yuzna, and Brian Yuzna directs it. And it's about a dentist who he's very anal, picky about, his house has to be set up just right. Well, he catches his wife cheating, and he just flies off the deep end and starts like really torturing patients, and it's not as comical as I thought it would be. There is humor in it, but it's a lot more darker than I thought it would be, especially for Brian Yuzna. I really enjoyed this. I haven't picked up Brian Yuzna's sequel, The Dentist 2, Brace Yourself, yet, but I do plan to get that sequel in the future. Then, of course, we have Beyond Re-Animator, the long-awaited third entry into the Re-Animator series. And you know what? I wasn't expecting a whole lot, so I actually really enjoyed this sequel. It's a lot lower. It looks a lot lower budget than the first two films, and it was filmed in Spain, so there's a lot of Spanish actors in it. But Herbert West now is in prison, and he's continuing his experiments. You know what? I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good third entry in the series, and I really hope they get around to making House of Re-Animator. Brian Yuzna is having trouble getting funding for it, and Stuart Gordon apparently is going to return to direct. But I actually liked this sequel. I thought it was a good one. And in the DVD, though, has a really hilarious bonus feature. There's a music video for a song that was written for the movie. It's a Spanish dance, disco, like a electro dance song, and it's hilarious. Reanimate your feet. If you don't have the DVD, go to YouTube, look up the music video. It is one of the most funny music videos and songs I have ever heard. So that is my Brian Yuzna collection. Again, he directs a lot of sequels. A lot of his films are underrated, and a lot of his films I wasn't a huge fan on first, but I have learned to appreciate him over time. So he's actually become one of my favorite directors in the horror genre.